They were young, had nothing to lose. They had good reputations. They had worked on the Kennewick Man. They had worked on the Sam Shepard exhumation case. They were well known as up-and-comers. They felt they could handle it, and they did. So I said, well, look, let me let you understand this. I made a big mistake sending the skull to Canada and just hoping they would do the right thing, because they didn't. I'm coming and I'm going to be there and I'm going to watch and make sure. They said, nothing to hide. You come, you do whatever you want. We're going to give you an answer if there's an answer to be gotten. And these guys could recover it properly and recover not only nuclear DNA but mitochondrial DNA. So we were going to be in good shape with these guys. So summer of 2003, we're ready to begin our process. But before we go there, I want to show you, we're going to do some other stuff. What on earth, Starchild? I just want to give you this quote. In 40 years of practice as a reconstructive plastic surgeon, I've never seen anything like it. I doubt if anyone else has either. Ted is the guy that hooked me up with the lab, but Ted is a very strong supporter of this because he is a craniofacial plastic surgeon. He was interested. He spent 6 weeks trying to find any kind of deformity that matched up even close with what the Starchild's combination of effects was. And he said at the end of that time, I'm convinced you've got something really special here and I'll help you. And he has to this day. And by the way, if the article comes out in the Daily Mail as it was supposed to on Wednesday and it keeps getting put off for reasons we don't understand, something's going on, Ted should be quoted in it because they wanted to talk to him. Anyway, so in those 3 years, those dead 3 years, a lot of things happened, and I started getting some very interesting information. This is a book, A Visual Guide to Alien Beings by David Chase, and what David did up to 97 was he called anybody that was saying that they had seen an alien. He didn't make any judgments. He didn't care if they were cranks or wackos or whatever. Just tell me what you think you saw, and he would draw it. And he found that they clustered into groups. The little blue men that looked kind of like fire plugs, they were the rarest and are the rarest, but they do exist. I was giving this lecture in New Zealand, and as many times as I've shown this, a woman just shrieked out of the audience, oh my God, that's what I've been trying for 20 years to tell people I saw, and nobody believes me, thank God, like that. So, but anyway, everybody knows the small grays, the tall grays, the human types, the Lyrans, Pleiadians, Anunnaki, whatever you want to call them, the reptilians that he has in a robe, and there's the insectoids that should be here as well. I asked him why he did this and put it in a robe and left the insect out, and he said, geez, man, I didn't want to scare people off with a really bad cover. So it made sense. But anyway, also it turns out that there are supposed to be hybrids between the tall grays and the Lyrans, Pleiadians, Anunnakis, and that's this, and also between these and the reptilians, or the tall ones and the reptilians, I'm not sure, but to produce a kind of hybrid there. All speculation, no proof, understand, but interesting. And this is just another tall gray, another version, just to show that, it's not just, David doesn't have the last word. That book will be out there on the table, though. You can kind of come thumb through it and see all the strange drawings that they have. Just a little interesting sidelight. The main thing I want to talk about, though, is harvesting. And we all know the story of harvesting. It's where women, young women, claim they're taken on board, made pregnant. They're definitely pregnant. They come back, they get a sonogram. They know they're pregnant. They've missed periods. They're usually it's twins, not usually, but frequently it's twins. And then in the 4th month, they will be taken on board or whatever, and they wake up with every sign of a miscarriage and no fetus. They've been harvested. And then some years later, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years later, they're taken on board and they're shown these little waif-like children, hybrid children, generally scraggly, thin blonde hair. This is a very accurate depiction from a movie of what these women consistently describe as seeing. They're hybrid children, and they believe it's theirs. They come to believe. They're told, apparently, bond, spend some time, this is your kid, get to know it, connect with it, and they do. And they come out of that experience with varying degrees of memory. As you may have heard, they supposedly put memory screens on you so that you can remember next to nothing, you can remember some, you can remember more. It's an individual thing. But anyway, a woman named Josie Galante, who was an artist in Taos, New Mexico, contacted me and she said, I was made pregnant in 1990 and I was harvested in 1990, and in 1995 I was taken on board and I saw a 5-year-old boy that I'm sure was mine. I'm convinced, and I drew his picture. Would you like to see it? So she sent it to me, and this is what she sent. And it looks, it's pretty good. I, would make a few changes, but not really bad at all relative to the Starchild, as you see. quite a little fit. 1995, 1999, this became public. Now, another interesting one is this. This was 1978, a lawyer, male lawyer, who had the money to do this, got a sculptor, and he had a good memory of it too. And this is interesting in that it has the correct, I think, kind of eyelids, because for that, the eyes of the Starchild, you got to have a much bigger lid to get down to cover over the eye placed much lower in the face. Nose could be pretty good, but the Starchild, I should have pointed out it didn't. It has no brow ridge, and the nose just goes absolutely straight. There's no brow ridge in the Starchild, and the nose drops straight down, as you'll see with the copy. So it's very different. The neck is a little large, I think, but the ears are about right. The cheekbones, I think, are a little too large, but it's in the ballpark, certainly in the ballpark. Now, here we see them together, and it's pretty interesting that the combination works out like that. 1978, 1995, 1999. Now, this is a conehead. People ask me, are there any other skulls like the Starchild in the world? I probably get all the weird skulls sent to me, none that I know of. Nothing like the Starchild. But the coneheads, yes. There are hundreds of coneheads, different places in the world, dominate in Peru because in the Atacama Desert it's just very, very dry. Probably rains there once every 10 years or something. So there are plenty of those skulls in museums in Peru. What is unique about them, though, is that their brains fill their heads. This is not an x-ray of this one, but as you see, the veins go right up through. Those heads are full of brain. Now, what does that mean? What does science say about this? So every time you see them, you hear their answer, they are deformed. They are deliberately bound, head bound. They're deliberately deformed, right? By head binding. Now, the problem is the brains in these skulls are twice the size of ours. They average 2,800 to 3,000 cubic centimeters. Remember, we are 1,400. There's no amount of head binding that is going to double the size of your brain. There is no amount of head binding that is going to double the size of your brain, yet all the coneheads have brains out to that size, and they're full of brain. Now, I've been saying for 10 years, and I'll say it here, these guys ought to be DNA tested just like the Starchild and everybody else, because I'll bet you, even though they have very human-like faces, these are not entirely human. They can't be. They can't be. Something's very different about them. But this is also an answer that science doesn't want. Just like they don't want to deal with the Starchild, they don't want to deal with the coneheads. That is just the reality of the situation. Next slide. Okay, variations on a theme, and you see. Pretty interesting. Now, in addition to these people contacting me and telling me their stories and informing me in those 3 years, I also got some examples of what people thought the Starchild might look like. And this is one of the first ones that came off of a cover of a magazine in 1999. And the guy told me he took his daughter, little daughter, and morphed her face to fit. But he said, you know, boy, it's really hard. It doesn't match up right. And I said, yeah, it really doesn't, does it? So he morphed her as best he could to give that look, which I thought was kind of cool and still do. Interesting look anyway. This is some artists began. This is Bill McDonald's attempt right here on the left. Now, we've all seen these eyes on a very bad Sunday morning after a really difficult Saturday night. We know those eyes, but they're not really Starchild eyes because the lids aren't right. Look at the size of the neck. No dent. He missed everything. Bill did, frankly, not a good job. This is Katie Lynn, an Oriental girl, and she turned it into a female, which is cool and okay, but I think she did a lot better job with the eyes and the lids. Nose might be. The jaw's too heavy. The neck's good, though. But, you know, we're getting there. We're getting there. This is a guy named Mark Savy, and Mark came up with this idea, which I thought was pretty good, but it came up again. The jaw's too heavy. He missed the dent in the crown. Ears might be okay. I like his nose, though. I think the nose is about right. Interesting, but it came out to be a pretty interesting look, except, again, a perfectly human mouth, very long throw from the nose to the lips, and much too heavy in the jaw. All right? Then came a guy named Rob Roy Menzies, and Rob Roy was great. He was in Alaska. Rob Roy's good, too. He's a good artist. He got the bright idea of putting it onto the X-ray and building a face like here. And when he sent me this, I said, well, could you make it a little less constipated looking? Because, you know, he just looks through like that. Can you do something with that look? And so he came up with this one on the left, and I said, God, Rob Roy, it's ugly enough to make the freight train take a dirt road. Can you do anything? And so he came up with this thing here, and which is not that bad, I think. You know, kind of close. The mouth is a little better. The eyes are not so crazed. But we worked on it a little more, and we finally got to this, which I was pretty happy with. Got the dent, got the eyes. We're not sure about the black, but, you know, everything is pretty good in this one, I think. Now, the reason I have it lined up against the famous communion picture, you all know the communion picture, off the famous book, I hope, by Whitley Strieber, Communion, largest selling book in the history of our field, and it became the iconic picture of a gray alien because of that.